You set a goal, you hit it, you felt good for about 11 minutes. Then you set another one. The Stoics had a word for this, actually. They'd had several, none of them kind. Think about the last time you really wanted something, not casually, but the kind where you'd planned it out. Imagine the moment, maybe told a few people. A promotion, a number on the scale, and then you got it. And there was that window, 11 minutes, maybe a few days if you were lucky, where it felt the way you'd imagined. And then it didn't, and you started looking at the next thing. Every self-help book starts with goals. Every productivity system is organized around them. Your company has quarterly OKRs. Your gym has a challenge with a whiteboard. There are apps designed entirely around the dopamine hit of ticking a box. And somehow, despite all of this infrastructure for achieving things, most people report feeling vaguely behind, vaguely not enough. Chasing. Epictetus watched this from a particular vantage point. He'd been a slave in Nero's Rome, which meant he'd had essentially no goals, because goals require a future you have some control over. What he noticed, watching people with full lives and freedoms and options, was that the ones who could set any goal they wanted were often the most wretched. He found that interesting. The story about his leg is probably true, which makes it relevant. His owner, a man named Epictetus, broke Epictetus's leg, apparently while making a point about power. Epictetus reportedly said, while it was happening, "You're going to break it." Then, "Didn't I tell you? No screaming, no begging." The leg healed wrong, and he walked with a limp for the rest of his life. You can read that as a party trick, the kind of Stoic Hardman story passed around online. But the philosophical machinery underneath it is more interesting than the anecdote. What Epictetus was doing, and what he spent the rest of his life teaching, was a very precise operation on the nature of desire itself. His core move was what we now call the dichotomy of control. Some things are up to us, some things are not. This sounds simple. It isn't. Because what Epictetus is saying isn't focus on what you can control in the vague motivational poster sense. He's saying your goals, the outcomes you're chasing, those are almost entirely not up to you. And the suffering that attaches to goals is not accidental. It's the structure of the thing. Attachment to an outcome you don't control is the mechanism of misery. That's the whole argument. And he made it from a slave cell. The Enchiridion states it plainly. Seek not that the things which happen as you wish. Wish the things which happen to be as they are, and you will have a tranquil flow of life. That's not resignation. It's a surgical removal of the machinery that makes you miserable. Or maybe not strange, maybe obvious in hindsight. The second noble truth of Buddhism is that suffering arises from craving. Tanha, in Pali, thirst. The Buddha wasn't talking about suffering from bad events. He was talking about the structure of wanting itself. The wanting, not the outcome, is the source. You want something, you don't get it, you suffer. You want something, you get it, you suffer the fear of losing it, or you want more of it, or you immediately want something else. The circle doesn't break by achieving more things. It breaks when the attachment to the outcome releases. Epictetus and the Buddha never met. They lived roughly 5 centuries apart, on opposite ends of the known world, working from completely different intellectual traditions. And they arrived at essentially the same diagnosis. That's probably worth sitting with for a moment. The Stoic version is a bit colder, more Roman. Epictetus doesn't talk much about compassion or the cessation of suffering as a spiritual destination. His framing is more practical, almost military. Here is the enemy, here is the weapon, use it. The Buddhist version has more texture, more warmth. The Bodhisattva delays their own liberation to help others get free. Different ends, same starting point. Craving, attachment to outcomes outside your control, is the machinery of suffering. Epictetus named it desire, aimed at externals. The Buddha named it tanha, 2 traditions, 2 languages, roughly the same diagnosis, which raises a question about what they were both noticing. You don't have to take Epictetus's word for it. About 2,000 years later, a Harvard psychologist named Tal Ben-Shahar ran the most popular course in that university's history. For a stretch in the 2000 seconds, it was a happiness course, kind of a funny detail. He described something he called the arrival fallacy. The arrival fallacy is the belief that when you get there, you'll feel the way you imagine. When you hit the goal, the feeling will arrive and stay. Ben Shahar identified it while watching his own students. These were some of the most accomplished young people in the world by any conventional measure. They'd gotten into Harvard. They'd worked absurdly hard. They'd had plans, but a significant portion of them were miserable. The framework they were in kept promising the next arrival would fix things. His research and the broader positive psychology literature around it basically confirms what Epictetus was saying with a lot more data points. Achievement produces a hit of satisfaction that's real, short, and immediately replaced by a new set point. The hedonic treadmill. You get a raise, you adjust to the raise, you feel normal again, you want another raise. You lose the weight, you adjust, you want to lose more. The goalposts aren't moving, they're regenerating. The attachment is what regenerates them. Ben Shahar's practical conclusion was that the process needs to matter, not the destination. Which is fine advice, honestly, but it doesn't go as far as Epictetus. Ben Shahar says, enjoy the journey, still a framework built around arriving somewhere. Epictetus is doing something more unsettling, asking whether the whole direction of travel is the problem. I know what you're thinking, because it's the same objection everyone raises. If you stop caring about outcomes, you stop doing things, you become passive. Nothing gets built, nobody gets out of bed. Goals are how civilization works. They're how you get a promotion, raise children, run a company, finish anything. Epictetus himself never stopped working. He ran a school, he had students. He produced the discourses, which are basically transcribed lectures, which means someone cared enough about what he was saying to write it down. He wasn't sitting in a room doing nothing. The Stoic response to this is pretty precise, actually. The distinction isn't between having intentions and not having them. It's between preferred indifference and passions. Epictetus absolutely thought you should prefer health to sickness, freedom to slavery, success to failure. What he objected to was the emotional architecture that treats those preferences as necessities, as things without which life can't be good. He writes, "Never say about anything, 'I have lost it,' but 'I have returned it.' Is your child dead? It has been returned. Is your wife dead? She has been returned." That sentence is almost unbearably cold. But the philosophical point isn't. It's saying, hold what you have as something borrowed, not something owned. Love it fully, pursue it hard, but don't build your stability on its continued presence. You can work toward things, you can want things. You just can't outsource your state of mind to whether or not you get them. That's actually quite different from passivity. You've done this. You set the alarm for 5 a.m. You bought the journal. You had a system, maybe the productivity app with the streak tracker, maybe the bullet journal, maybe just a list. You lasted 9 days or 90, and then something happened or nothing happened, and you stopped. And then you felt bad about stopping. Not just bad that you didn't hit the thing, bad at yourself for being the kind of person who doesn't follow through. 2 failures for the price of 1. What Epictetus is pointing at is that the goal itself set up that second failure. The goal required a version of you that doesn't exist yet, and then punished the version of you that does exist for the gap. The alarm at 5 a.m., the journal, the streak, these aren't bad things, but they're not where the stability you're looking for actually lives. Epictetus died free. He'd been a slave, owned, with a broken leg, in one of the most brutal empires in history, and he died free in a city where he'd been nobody. He never wrote anything down himself. The discourses are Arrian's notes, transcribed without his knowledge or permission, which is a somewhat remarkable way for your life's work to survive. He didn't have goals in the conventional sense. He had values. He had things he was trying to become. And those things didn't depend on anything outside him. Maybe the 11 minutes after you hit the goal is actually the problem telling you something. Not that you chose the wrong goal, that you're waiting in the wrong place.